Hello again. In this presentation, we'll review a case study that we'll be using throughout the course. According to William Ellett of Harvard Business School, cases are verbal descriptions of actual or realistic situations that are used to place the student in a position of manager to practice decision-making. In this course, we'll be using one case as a simulation of a skill-based competitive selection, and we'll examine it from both a prospective employer's and a job applicant's perspective. The case is called Hiring a New Employee. You can find it in the module readings. Its goal is to provide a simulated environment to represent a skill-based competitive selection process. We will use this simulation to illustrate how skills assessment is performed by experts and employers, and how you can use the same approaches and techniques to organize and monitor your self-assessment and skill-building activities. The company in this case is fictional and used for illustration purposes only. Also, the case is not intended as a study for human resource management professionals. As in the previous course, we'll begin exploring the selection process by examining it from the employer's point of view. This is important for two reasons. First, it is the employer who sets the stage for competitive selection. Therefore, in order to create a realistic setting for exploring a competitive selection process, we must start by taking an employer's side. Second, an individual career brand is determined by an employer's perception of the individual. That's why, even when we are considering selection from a job applicant's perspective, it is always good to see the process through the employer's lens. In this case, you'll meet Rick, the hiring manager. Rick is charged with a number of how-to questions. Most importantly, how to define critical tasks, how to assess the candidate's skills, and how to compare results in order to select the best candidate for the job. To prepare for the selection process, Rick needs to conduct a thorough job analysis to identify the most important job functions for the position and describe the underlying skills that are necessary. Assessment of required competencies seems to be the hardest problem that a hiring manager must solve. In the case, Rick is charged with the task of arranging skills assessment for candidates for a specified position. Fortunately, according to the case, he's able to get some professional advice and learn how experts conduct skills assessment. In week 2, you will also learn from experts about skills assessment. Then, as a result of his workplace assessment training, Rick gets ready to evaluate the candidates. To do so, he identifies critically important competencies and their components and learns how he can arrange measurements and comparisons. In week 2, you will be required to do the same. With the use of assessment tools, Rick gets ready to observe and evaluate the candidate's performance and assign numerical values for each candidate's competency. Finally, Rick discovers that if he has skills assessment results for all required competencies for each candidate, he can easily calculate their final scores to select someone who best is suited for the position. But this is a big if, as it requires collecting evidence from the candidates and evaluating it against benchmarks with the use of assessment instruments. At the end of the case, Rick examines available assessment instruments and makes preparations for collecting samples of the candidate's mastery in performing required job duties. But the case doesn't describe how he conducts assessment. In week 2, we'll invite you to join Rick and help him with the assessment using written communications as an example of the required competency. Your next steps are to read the case and prepare assessment tools. Your task for the next week is to learn about the expert evaluation of transferable skills. After that, you'll be ready to switch gears and begin thinking about the selection process from a job applicant's perspective.